How much money do you really need to retire? $1 million? 2 million? 500,000? Or maybe much less than you've been told? If you've spent any time looking up retirement advice, you've probably seen numbers thrown around that can make retirement seem almost impossible. Save 10 times your salary, have $1 million in the bank, build a portfolio big enough to replace most of your working income. But there's a problem with those numbers. They don't know where you live. They don't know whether your house is paid off. They don't know if you'll have Social Security, a pension, rental income, or debt. And they definitely don't know what kind of retirement you actually want. So today we're going to answer a much more useful question. Not, what's the magic retirement number? But, how much money will you actually need to support the life you want after you stop working? And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you a simple way to estimate your own retirement number without assuming you need to become a millionaire first. Welcome to Passports and Pathways, where we talk about affordable retirement, relocation, housing, healthcare, living abroad, and how to make your money go further after 50. If you're planning the next stage of your life, subscribe to the channel because we're going to keep breaking these decisions down in plain English. Let's start with the biggest mistake people make when thinking about retirement. They start with savings. I want you to start with spending, because if you don't know how much your retirement lifestyle costs, a savings goal by itself doesn't tell you very much. Imagine two retirees. The first person needs $6,000 every month to maintain their lifestyle. The second needs $3,000. Even if both people have exactly the same amount saved, they don't have the same retirement situation. So before asking how much money you need to retire, ask, how much will I actually spend every month? Start with housing. Will you still have a mortgage? Will you rent? Will your home be completely paid off? Are you planning to downsize, move to a cheaper state, or perhaps retire overseas? Housing may be the single biggest variable in your retirement plan. Someone paying $2,000 a month for housing has a completely different retirement number from someone spending $700. Next comes healthcare. This category becomes increasingly important as we get older. You'll want to think beyond just insurance premiums. There can be deductibles, co-payments, prescriptions, dental care, vision, hearing, long-term care, and expenses that insurance simply doesn't cover. Then transportation. Will you still have a car payment? How much will you drive? What about insurance, fuel, repairs, registration? Or could you live somewhere walkable enough that you don't need two vehicles anymore? Then add food, utilities, phone, internet, clothing, entertainment, travel, gifts, home maintenance, taxes, and everything else you spend money on. Let's use a simple example. Suppose you estimate that you could comfortably live on $4,000 per month in retirement. That's $48,000 per year. Now the question becomes much easier. Where will that $48,000 come from? This is where Social Security matters. The estimated average Social Security retirement benefit in early 2026 is a little over $2,000 per month. Your own benefit could be considerably higher or lower. But let's use $2,000 for a simple example. That's $24,000 per year. If your retirement lifestyle costs $48,000 per year, but Social Security provides $24,000, you don't necessarily need your savings to produce $48,000. You need them to cover the difference. In this example, that's another $24,000 per year. And this is the part of retirement planning that gets overlooked when people throw around huge savings numbers. Your savings don't exist in isolation. They're part of an income system. You may have Social Security. You might have a pension. You might have part-time income, rental income, an annuity, investment income, or another household member bringing in retirement income. So instead of asking, do I have $1 million, ask, how large is the gap between my guaranteed or predictable income and what I expect to spend? That's your real starting point. Let's look at another example. Suppose a married couple expects to spend $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year. Between their two Social Security benefits, let's say they're expecting $38,000 a year. That leaves a gap of $22,000. Their investment portfolio needs to help support that $22,000 gap. Now compare them with another couple spending $7,000 per month. That's $84,000 per year. If their Social Security income is also $38,000, their annual gap is $46,000. Same Social Security, completely different retirement savings requirement. This is why lifestyle matters so much. Now let's talk about the rule you've probably heard before, the 4% rule. In very simple terms, this guideline suggests beginning retirement by withdrawing roughly 4% of a diversified retirement portfolio during the first year, then adjusting future withdrawals for inflation. It was never meant to be a guarantee, and it doesn't fit every person, but it gives us a rough planning tool. Let's use that $24,000 annual gap from our first example. If you wanted $24,000 to represent roughly 4% of your portfolio, you'd need around $600,000 invested. 24,000 divided by 4% gives you 600,000. Now suppose your annual gap is only $12,000. At 4%, that's roughly a $300,000 portfolio. But suppose your gap is $40,000. At 4%, you're looking at around $1 million. That's why asking, do I need $1 million to retire, is the wrong question. Some people might, some might need more, others could potentially retire with far less. The amount depends heavily on the gap you're trying to fund. Now here's where relocation becomes extremely powerful. Suppose you're spending $60,000 a year where you currently live. You decide to retire somewhere less expensive and reduce your spending to $42,000. That's an $18,000 difference every year. Over 20 years, that's $360,000 before even considering inflation or investment returns. That's why choosing where you retire can be just as important as choosing your investments. A lower-cost city, a smaller home, a state with a different tax structure, or even another country. All of those decisions can change the amount of money you need. But don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Moving somewhere cheap doesn't automatically make retirement successful. You still need health care. You still need a safe place to live. You still want access to family, friends, transportation, and things you actually enjoy. The goal isn't to find the cheapest place on earth. It's to find a place where the life you want costs less than the life you're currently paying for. Now let's talk about debt. Debt can dramatically raise your retirement number. Imagine entering retirement with a $600 car payment, $300 in credit card payments, and a $1,500 mortgage. That's $2,400 every month before you've bought food, paid for health care, or turned on a light. Now imagine retiring with no credit card debt, a paid-off vehicle, and either a paid-off home or much lower housing costs. Again, same income, completely different retirement. That's why paying down high-cost debt before retirement can sometimes be just as valuable as increasing your investment account. Next, let's talk about the size of your emergency fund. Your retirement portfolio should not be your only line of defense. Cars break, roofs leak, air conditioners die. People need dental work. Family emergencies happen, and markets don't always cooperate when you need money. Having cash reserves can keep you from being forced to sell investments during a bad market just because something unexpected happened. How much cash you need depends on your situation. But retirement becomes a lot less stressful when every unexpected expense doesn't immediately threaten your monthly budget. Now there's another variable people underestimate. How long are you planning for? If you retire at 62, your money may need to support you for 30 years or longer. If you retire at 70, that's a very different timeline. Nobody knows exactly how long they'll live. That's why retirement planning isn't about predicting the exact date your money needs to last until. It's about giving yourself enough flexibility that a long life becomes good news instead of a financial crisis. And that brings us to Social Security timing. Your benefit depends partly on when you claim. Social Security statistics show substantial differences between benefits received at younger claiming ages and later ages. That doesn't automatically mean everyone should wait. Health, employment, spousal benefits, savings, and personal circumstances all matter. But the amount of guaranteed monthly income you receive affects how much your savings need to provide. That's why Social Security and your retirement portfolio should be considered together rather than as completely separate decisions. Now let's make this really simple. Here's a basic 5-step way to estimate your retirement number. First, estimate your monthly retirement expenses, not your current income, your expected expenses. Let's say that's $4,000 a month. Second, multiply that by 12. Now your annual retirement spending target is $48,000. Third, estimate your predictable annual retirement income. Let's say Social Security and other guaranteed income total $30,000 per year. Fourth, subtract your income from your spending. $48,000 minus $30,000 leaves an $18,000 annual gap. Fifth, estimate how much invested money may be needed to support that gap. Using 4% as a rough planning benchmark, $18,000 divided by 0.04 comes to approximately $450,000. Does that mean $450,000 guarantees that retirement will work? Absolutely not. Taxes matter, inflation matters, investment performance matters, healthcare matters, life expectancy matters, and your spending will change over time. But now you have a much more useful starting point than simply hearing someone say that everybody needs $1 million. Let's do 3 quick examples. The first person wants a simple retirement. They need $3,000 per month. That's $36,000 per year. Their Social Security and pension provide $30,000. Their gap is only $6,000 per year. Using our rough 4% guideline, that's equivalent to about $150,000 in invested assets. Now our second retiree needs $4,500 per month. That's $54,000 per year. They receive $30,000 from Social Security and other predictable income. Their gap is $24,000. That points toward roughly $600,000 under the same simple guideline. And our third retiree wants a more expensive lifestyle, $7,000 per month. That's $84,000 per year. They expect $36,000 from predictable income. Their annual gap is $48,000. At 4%, you're now looking at roughly $1.2 million. 3 retirees, 3 completely different answers. That's why there is no universal magic number. Now there's another question you should ask yourself. Do you actually want to stop working completely? Some retirees do. Others enjoy working 10 or 15 hours a week, maybe consulting, driving, teaching, freelancing, running a small business, or doing seasonal work. Even $500 of additional monthly income is $6,000 per year. That can materially reduce what you need to withdraw from savings. And it doesn't necessarily have to feel like going back to a full-time job. Retirement doesn't have to mean never earning another dollar. It can mean having control over whether, when, and how much you work. Now let's talk about one of the most important questions of all. What are you retiring to? Because it's easy to spend years obsessing over the number and forget the point. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to fish. Maybe you want to spend time with grandchildren. Maybe you want to move somewhere warm. Maybe you want to garden. Maybe you want to live abroad. Maybe you simply want enough money to wake up on Monday morning and know that nobody can tell you where you have to be. Your retirement plan should support that life, not somebody else's. So how much money do you really need to retire? The answer isn't $1 million. It isn't $500,000, and it isn't $2 million. The real answer is enough predictable income and savings to cover the gap between what your retirement life costs and what your reliable income already provides. For some people, that might require over $1 million. For others, it may be several $100,000. And for someone with a strong pension, Social Security, low housing costs, and very little debt, the required investment balance could be much smaller. That's why your retirement number shouldn't begin with someone else's savings goal. It should begin with your own life. Your housing, your healthcare, your debt, your Social Security, your location, your lifestyle, and the amount of security you need to sleep comfortably at night. In the next video, we're going to look at one of the biggest ways to lower that retirement number. The 10 cheapest states to retire in and what you actually gain and give up by moving to each one. We'll look beyond just cheap houses and compare the things retirees care about, including taxes, healthcare, housing, and everyday living costs. If you want to see that comparison, subscribe to Passports and Pathways and turn on notifications. And let me know in the comments. What number do you have in your head right now? 500,000? 1 million? More? Or are you planning your retirement around monthly income instead? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next pathway.